Hey everybody, welcome to the inaugural episode of the Sales and Marketing Baldcast. You can tell the reason for the name of the podcast. It's a Baldcast, and we're two bald guys. What can we say? My name is Chuck Coxhead. I'm longtime Director of Sales and Marketing in the manufacturing community, currently working in the warehouse productivity and ERP space. I'm joined by my partner, John Kunzier. He is with his company, Aerial Digital. John, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. I am John, and I run Aerial Digital Agency, and basically we do consulting work, strategy work. We help clients understand what their message is, what their value proposition, and then help them go to market. I've been in marketing for the last decade with some major IT organizations, and just enjoy sales and marketing and all the fun things that go along with that.
Well, I second that 1,000%. I've been doing this. I've been manufacturing for 35 years, and I have been in sales and marketing for 25, and I'm just a geek about it. I just freaking love this.
Does this mean we're just old? We're both in this for 35 years. We're old. That's what it is. I
can be old. I'm bald. I got a gray beard.
Yeah,
old is fine with me.
Old is good.
Hashtag old, you know what.
Hashtag.
Anyway. So what we're out to do with the Sales and Marketing Baldcast is we're here to give you information you can use, hopefully give you some lessons, share some of our stories, some of our experiences over the years, but it's nothing unless you can put it into action. So we're going to start with a great topic today. This is an inaugural episode, and we're going to talk about sales and marketing alignment. You know, where we come from, my experience is sales and marketing, primarily sales. John's experience is sales and marketing, primarily marketing. So we have a little bit different perspective on this thing, and we definitely agree on a couple of things for certain, and that is you got to do stuff different, and we absolutely believe that you got to have good systems thinking and processes. So we're going to get right into it, sales and marketing alignment. So John, why don't you kick us off? What do you think, where do you think we are in terms of sales and marketing alignment? Clearly, it's an issue.
It is.
Okay, so why don't you frame it for us?
So again, in coming from the marketing side, right, we have a general lack of understanding of what marketing's job is and what sales their job is, and how do we communicate to those things, right? So marketing's off selling, promoting, creating awareness, doing all of these things, and sales is going, they don't have no idea what they're doing. And that's not really what we're selling. And the idea is, so you're spending money targeting something that you're not really interested in selling, which sounds a lot like a waste of time and effort on everyone's part. So when we think about it, how do we actually connect those two groups so that we're both rowing in the same direction? Right, and that is really, the challenge of that alignment and that understanding.
Well, I think it comes from the other direction too. I think sales has a complete lack of understanding of what marketing does. They truly do. They think of marketing as an organization that just feeds them. They exist to feed them, but they don't really understand what it is they're trying to accomplish. They don't understand the creative aspect, and they don't understand. Oftentimes, they don't understand the data aspect. They don't understand what the different channels are. It's kind of this voodoo to salespeople. So just give me something so I can go run with it. And oftentimes they fall down because of that lack of understanding.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and marketing has become exponentially more complex, right? Between, it used to be just email, right? And when I started, it was letters, right? We literally write letters out and we push them out, and that was your channel, and you'd go to an event and, a trade show. Well, now we have webinars, and now we have social media, and we've got, YouTube that we can use. We've got podcasts. We still have direct mail. We have live events. There are so many things that we can deliver that we have to think about from a marketing perspective. It's no wonder that salespeople can be confused at where the hell did this come from, right? When we look at it, and it could have come from an analyst. We have no idea. Yet marketing is engaging with them and driving that. So how do you do the attribution? So it's really, again, it's easy to understand how someone can get confused at all the tactics we're doing to try to actually drive that awareness and drive leads.
Well, I mean, sales has gotten somewhat more complex as well. I mean, literally it started out with somebody, the old image of a guy carrying a leather suitcase sample bag, and he was walking from door to door knocking, and that was all he had, and then along came the telephone. And we began to drive, and slowly but surely we introduced different technologies that allow us to do our job better. And when I got into the business, I mean, hands down, the best way is to go out and knock on those doors. I was a lobby rat, and it worked wonders. Now we understand, and honestly, we understand it because marketing has helped us to understand it in some ways. We understand that a multi-pronged approach. I mean, who hasn't heard of 7 touches, 7 different ways? I challenge whether that's enough nowadays, but we've all heard, exactly. You're right. You know what? It's not, hashtag it's not.
It's not.
Boom.
Hashtag
it's not. But we've all heard of it, and we get that from marketing, and we continue to add these technologies that allow us to nurture customers, which is not something sales ever really understood or even comprehended was a possibility. Nurture. It's a multifaceted, multi-channel approach that needs to be laid out. And our understanding has come a long way as it's become more complex as well. So.
And I totally agree. I mean, that is because of that complexity, we have to actually do a better job of actually communicating to each other and setting the right expectations.
Of course,
because I think when we look at it, what has to happen, right? There's a lot of process that goes through. I mean, I've heard anywhere from 15 to 20 touches now that you have to actually get somebody engaged, and our clients are buying differently, right?
Indeed.
They're I've seen surveys from anywhere from 60% to 80% of the buying cycle is done well before ever engaging a salesperson or a sales team.
Yep.
Right. And we all do it, right? We're all looking, we use, Google, and we do our searches, and we figure out what we're trying to do. And we look at YouTube and try to understand who's doing what. We ask our friends, right? So we have to really begin to set those expectations that leads are going to come in, and we're going to create those opportunities from a marketing perspective, but we may not know exactly where they're coming from because it's usually 15 different things that created that.
Well, I think one of the expectations, I mean, thinking about it from the sales side, is we have this expectation you're going to tee them up and they're going to be super easy. And the phrase that's come about is intent in 21st century. You have high top of funnel, lower intent leads where they may not be on a buying journey, maybe just be on an education journey at that point. And you have middle of funnel, higher intent leads where they are deeply into it, say, okay, I'm ready to start pulling some strings on this puppet and we're going to make this thing move forward. And they come in at different levels, and each of those different types of leads or prospects, they need to be treated differently. They go into a different nurture cycle. But sales expects they're all going to come in and be perfect. They're all going to be high intent. Well, clearly that's a difference in expectation. It's just unrealistic.
Right. And again, you may have somebody that says, I have some timing, but I have no budget, right? I don't have the authority to do it, but I know we're doing something, right? I'm here to gather, right? I've been directed because the people who are driving this are saying, I don't really want to get involved until we're ready. So we've got to set those expectations that when it gets passed over, it's not going to be perfect. There's work to be done, right? And if it's not right, we need to figure out how to get that information back to the marketing team. To
Absolutely.
say, hey guys, you're giving us these things. If we see this scenario, it's probably not a good lead. We should just back off, right? Because it doesn't fit in our market. They're too far out. They're this, they're that, right? We then need to change and listen and create that loop, that feedback loop that says, okay, when we see that scenario, we actually put them over in this category. We nurture them some more to see what happens. But if they're in this category, we're going to do this. And now we're going to start to actually drive what's happening.
Well, I'd like to take it to a logical extreme. I mean, now, if you imagine say, I want a ton of leads. I want as many as I can get because I can handle them. And they're all high intent and they're all at this point in their buying journey. Be careful what you wish for. You're going to get so overloaded that you're not going to satisfy anyone very well.
Right.
And that is a disaster. Customer experience suffers. Your sales will suffer in the short run and the long run. So at some point, one of two things has to happen. You need to fill your pipeline at high intent, medium, low intent, and low intent, or high, medium, and low intent. And you need to have those because that is your schedule, if you will, your forecast for potential opportunities in the future. Or if everything comes in at high intent, you just have to accept that you're going to be getting just a few. And that is going to put the onus very heavily on sales to outperform, not to perform, to outperform, because there's no getting lost in the shuffle or the noise. Very few leads, you're going to expect at a very high close rate. You better be ready to deliver. And most organizations aren't prepared to deliver. So, they don't have the processes in place. They don't have sales playbooks. They don't, honestly, they're not trained very well. They don't have people who have the creativity to be able to be agile, adjust on the fly, shift into different nurturing campaigns. And again, these are things that they cross over from marketing into sales, but they're crucial for salespeople just as well as they are marketing, to understand them and to execute them, because there's not going to be somebody to like knock on your shoulder and tap on your shoulder all the time. There shouldn't be. You're a grown up.
Right. Well, and I think some of what you're touching on too is that we need to be very focused at how we're going to market, right?
Yes.
So when we think about we're going to be able to sell a product, and it's particularly hard if you have a horizontal product. You have to begin to look at it and say, how do I put that into a niche? How do I specialize that in so that I create that differentiation, at least if it's a messaging, even at a messaging level and a value level. So, for example, I'm working with a client who we actually created a differentiation within the construction space for IT services, right? Managed services. And really looked at it and said, it really wasn't that much different than what they provided to everybody else, but we messaged it really well. And what happened was, because of that, we drove about $1 million worth of recurring revenue for them and about 400 endpoints. And we did that in 7 months. We hit the year goal because we focused and specialized that message and started to really drive it. What we're doing next is going to do add another specialty that we're going to drive toward that and really align that sales and marketing. So we have people going after it, if they understand what that value is and they understand how to talk about it. Because if you don't create those expectations and set those goals and do that alignment, you're shotgunning everything. And guess what? You're not going to win a lot. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, clearly. I mean, the goal setting, it's management and business 101, but it's oftentimes done in silos. So sales has their goals, and they're usually revenue and margin based, sometimes, as differentiated from KPIs. And marketing has goals based on, it may be heavily activity based, it may be quality based, but so often we forget that our alignment is the same. Sales has KPIs that are activity based and quality based. Marketing has goals that are activity-based and marketing-based, but the bottom line is we always come together at revenue and ultimately gross margin, right? So that absolutely is a must, and they both need to have those goals set based on that. I mean, that is the topic of this conversation, and it's just absolutely got to be lockstep.
Yeah. Well, and I look at it, and it's funny. Everybody says, "What measures do you care about as a marketing person?" I'm like, "Well, the first one I care about is, hey, what's happening on our website? What's happening on our web hits?" It's a leading indicator that we're creating activity and awareness and things that are happening. It doesn't mean anything to anybody else, but it says our message is starting to land and we're starting to do things. Year over year, we're looking at that. To me, then it's meetings, right? How many meetings are we setting up? It's not how many people opened it and how many people did this and it's how many meetings did we set up? And then the last one is really ultimately revenue. And the biggest challenge I have from a marketing perspective is, how do you do that attribution in a time when you're going to touch them 15 times and you can't connect it?
And it's getting harder and harder.
It's getting harder and harder. So we have to set those expectations to simplify the goals, to say, let's look at what matters, right? Activity that's hitting our website, basically that's our public window. We're starting to see what's going on, and then it turns into those things that we can actually measure and salespeople care about, right? And we start to look at how many meetings our salespeople are getting across the board. Because all of a sudden, if we're doing marketing and the meetings start to climb, even though we can't do attribution, that to me is attribution. So,
well, I'm in a similar place, in terms of that. But I think where we're coming from that sales perspective is ultimately the only thing I really care about is revenue. But there are certain things that I prefer to work backwards from, really from margin to revenue to close ratio to sales cycle length, and honestly, speed through the pipeline. I really care about pipeline velocity. It's crucial. It means that it's a measure of our effectiveness. That we're not so busy churning and burning dollars and calories to get the same effect. And that backs up into activity. Now you have a new salesperson, you have a poor process. You have to go and you have to onboard them and work them into activity. You don't have anything else at that juncture. Right. It's not an instantaneous explosion of pipeline growth velocity and close rate. So you start with activity, but you have to progress through that as both the individual, the team, and the organization progress. And let's not let sales off the hook in terms of the marketing aspect. They are a crucial source of marketing research, a crucial source of customer feedback to know not only is sales effective, is marketing effective?
Right.
Are you giving them the qualitative and quantitative data that is being asked for? And that, again, is an alignment. Salespeople don't understand marketing, so you have to agree on what that's going to be and what's the process going to be. How are you going to formalize the process? One of the greatest things I ever heard was day one, create a client success program.
Yep.
Heck, it might have been you that told me that.
I think it was.
I think it was you. See, John.
I did. Well, again,
I learn.
Yeah, it's the number one thing that especially B2B buyers, but it could be B2C. It could be anybody. Mm-hmm. We buy from people that we recognize, mm-hmm. right? We recognize that, hey, one of my friends is using you. Right, I saw this in a magazine, and mm-hmm. I understand it because they're using it, or my competitor's using it. I want to understand what they're doing. As marketers, if you don't have an organized client success program, that would be the first thing you do tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning, you set up and say, this is what we're doing. It doesn't have to be huge, right? It has to be, we're collecting base information around mm-hmm. that. We know we're not going to get permission from most people to use their names, so you make them blind. Mm-hmm. You create that inventory and really focus on that. That is an ongoing, never-ending process that you set up, right? Because, again, connecting to that client, understanding who those clients are going to do two things. It's going to help you build the stories, and you're going to get great feedback because everybody wants to be heard. And amazingly, when you get feedback, you know what you can do? You can build differentiated products and services and solutions based on that feedback. And all of a sudden, it's another closed loop because mm-hmm. we're hearing, hey, we have this problem. And one thing that I always love is when I'm talking to a client and I'm explaining what we're thinking, and they go, John, you are right on the right track, but mm-hmm. let me tell you about how it really happens in our organization. And all of a sudden, they spill the beans. Mm-hmm. And we hear all of the challenges. And mm-hmm. where does that go? Goes right into the product development, services development, right into the messaging, and how do we actually differentiate ourselves out in the market space? That's what leading companies do, right? So if you're not doing client success and you're not getting your marketing and salespeople to talk to clients about what they're doing, mm-hmm. you're missing the boat around that and missing a huge opportunity.
Well, I've got a hard question for all you people out there that are listening to this. How many of your organizations, how many of you sales directors, VPs of sales, how many of you have set up your process such that you get a sale, you move on, whoo, what have you done for me lately? Give me the next lead.
Yep.
Do you have, as part of your official formal process, to create and execute customer experience follow-up? Do you? When's the last time you put that into your expectation for your salespeople? Whoo, moving on. I'm going to close the next biggie. I got a trip to win. I'll bet most of you don't. You don't even try. Let alone align with marketing to understand what additional information we can get beyond customer experience when we're doing it. Okay? Because a customer doesn't want to be annoyed. They want value. As John said, they want to be heard. And if you're helping them to be heard, they're going to love you and they're going to be loyal and they're going to come back.
And they're going to recommend their pals.
Oh,
right? They're going to say, "Hey, look, I'm dealing with Chuck over here, and he follows up, and we had a problem, and you know what happened? He made sure that we got it resolved." Mm-hmm. Salespeople, you feel like I'm going to get pulled into something I shouldn't be in. Mm-hmm. Guess what? That's part of your job because ultimately, for you to hit your goal, you need to be seen as a leader. right? You need to be seen that you care about what's happening with that client, and they accept that and understand it. It's amazing when you actually think about it that way. It's the unexpected consequence, right? If you hit and run and move on, the unexpected consequences, you're never going to get a reference from them. If you take the phone call, if you meet with them and you find out that they're having an issue, guess what? They're going to remember. And when you need a favor for a reference, they're going to like, yeah, we're not perfectly happy, but you helped us so many times. I'll give you a good reference, right? Those are the things that we need to think about.
I love it. I'd like to switch gears a little bit here.
Okay.
I'd like to talk about SQLs and MQLs. I'm going to put it out there. Both are expected. Sales qualified leads and marketing qualified leads. Both are absolutely expected. Sales should be out prospecting, some every single day, and marketing clearly is about generating leads as well. But they're two very, very different animals. And I think marketing comes from one place on them, sales comes from another place on them. We talked a lot in the prep about the Q in the middle of SQL and MQL, and that's the qualification process. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your thoughts on the MQL?
So I look at MQLs as somebody raising their hand that says, I have some level of interest in your product. And that level would be, I've got budget allocated, I've got a timeline, I have authority, right? So I'm looking at it, but I don't have everything, right? I have enough that I'm going to turn around and say, we think based on what's going on. That then should go over to a salesperson as a lead, right? And then they turn around and they qualify. So an MQL should get converted into an SQL, right? A sales qualified lead. Once a salesperson says, hey, John, your team was right. That is a sales qualified lead, and we're going to put it in the pipe. We're going to measure it. We're going to track it. We're going to do all of that. Or, hey, John, you guys were off. We have to kind of step back, and here's where you guys were off. Here's the feedback. Not, hey, you guys are idiots. You shouldn't do this, right? It's, hey, look, this is what we're thinking about, and this is what's happening out in the field. We love that feedback because it's going to make us better at providing more and more leads, and it could change our messaging and some of the things that we're looking at. So, I look at that, and keeping that integrity between an MQL and SQL is really important because it's going to help us understand what that conversion looks like and better forecast what we're going to do and how much money we need and what tactics we're going to use and where it's all coming from. Because we measure everything.
You better.
We do. We measure absolutely everything. But we want to get down to those really core things that we care about, but also that feedback to say, okay, when we see this scenario, now we're going to actually change that and change how we're communicating it to you and say, yes, this is a lead, low priority 2 versus a priority 1 lead, which says we think there's budget and timing, right, and authority. We just don't have everything, right?
I think the exact same thing you do. I've been using different language lately. I think about it's inbound and outbound. If it's inbound, the customer picked up the phone and called you. The customer sent the email. If it's outbound, we picked up the phone and we called them or we sent them an email to initiate it. And then there's high intent and low intent. And I think that is where, in my mind, if we think about it the same, we sales and marketing are the same. Sales is one-to-one, marketing is one-to-many. It's that kind of relationship. But I think if we think about it that way and we understand we are the same, it's just it's different set of methods, tools, and technologies that allow us to go forward, we realize that we actually are aligned at our core. Sales is not marketing, marketing is not sales. But if we use that, as I say, I use inbound, outbound, and high and low intent is really how I think about it. And then the rest is process. There's a handoff process from marketing to sales. There's a sales process handoff to marketing because you might bring something in that's low intent. You're going to move them into a nurture campaign where you literally hand it off, and marketing is going to take over from there. And that depends on where they come into the funnel. Where are they on their buying journey? Are they on an education journey, a curiosity journey, or are they on a buying journey, which means they're likely to have a lot higher intent. There might be budgeted, or certainly they have something they're trying to fix, accomplish, or avoid. And if we really understand that at our core level we're the same with a different set of skills and tools, then it's easy to be aligned.
Well, and there's also, when you talk about sales and marketing are the same, right? Salespeople can be out marketing. Right?
Absolutely.
They can be doing podcasts. They can put their voice out. They can do some of their own emailing, right? And topics and social media. So I did, this summer, I started a very simple test on social media. I hadn't really been doing much. I've been really busy like everybody. And I started posting one article a day, every day from the Wall Street Journal or NPR or CNN or Fox or whatever, right? Pushing this stuff out. My engagement went up 1,000%, right? I started showing up. I was in, 2, LinkedIn news feeds, right? From one simple post every day. It took me about 15 minutes, and I read the Wall Street Journal every day. So all of a sudden, I'm learning, and now I'm pushing out, and people are expecting certain content from me and what I'm going to be doing. Now I'm going to start pushing better content out around what I do, but I'm not going to stop that process.
I have an idea. Start a sales and marketing podcast.
Hey, that's a good thing. Maybe we should call it the Baldcast.
Hey, that'd be a great idea.
That's a good thing. So again, I think that's part of what what we should be thinking about, is that it's not exclusively one or the other. Right, we are all in this. We're all in this together. Boy, that sounds like a song or something.
Well, it does. Well, I'm back to the alignment. Yeah, sales can do that, and it's definitely there's definitely a contribution from both sides. The sales needs marketing to be able to understand how effective they're being. Okay, sales does not have that. You can look at engagement, but engagement is a vanity metric. It doesn't really mean a lot. What is happening behind the scenes? I've done the experiments where I can see the engagement go high, and I can see that it translates directly into website traffic. Now, what happens once they hit the website? That's an entirely different topic, an entirely different podcast episode. Hell, it's an entirely different year of some team's life spent. Likewise, sales, if they want to do that, if they have the initiative, desire, and creativity to do it, they are going to need that alignment of messaging. They're going to need some content to distribute, because if you're out posting memes and pictures of your dog and you're a salesperson, your reputation's going to suffer. No one's going to take you seriously. So marketing supplies the information, okay, that helps them to do it. Sales can execute. They then can provide feedback to marketing, say, this is what we're doing, this is where our timing is, this is when, this is the kind of engagement I get, because marketing can't see what's on your feed. And then marketing can close that loop and say, okay, and that corresponded to this on our website, right? And sales can provide back to marketing, and this corresponded, I got connections from these people in my target market. See, you keep your network connections to yourself. When's the last time you shared that you got X number of people over this time frame with marketing that are in your target market? When's the last time? I'll bet never, for 99.9% of you. Just saying.
Yeah. Well, and there's ways of organizing it through, for example, LinkedIn and certain license levels, where I can see, if I'm connected in the same group as Chuck, I can see his connections. Hey, I want to get with that person. You know them. So there's ways that we can actually begin to look at that and use some of these tactics. The issue is, for me, is the more people stir in the pot in your target market for your products and services, the better. Because you're gonna bubble things up, things are gonna come out. And ultimately, it may not benefit you as a salesperson, but it may benefit somebody else, and vice versa, right? Some salesperson's going to kick up some dust and go, hey, that's in your territory. Go talk to this person. And I know them, right? Go talk to these people. So again, that's part of what we're doing. And it seems so obvious and simple, but we all get so focused on what we have to do. And if we thought about more of the collective good, what will happen is things will start to actually momentum will start to build.
So it sounds to me like even as simple as LinkedIn and social media, it sounds like alignment, expectations, goals, and a comprehensive strategy as you do it. It's not just throw it up against the wall and see if it sticks haphazardly.
And this is where the alignment comes in, because we can't do all of this at the same time.
Of course not.
I'm the guy that says we're going to layer everything. First layer of the cake, we're going to do X. Once we get good at that, we're going to put another layer on top of it. We're going to put another layer on top of it. Because again, you've got to build that maturity within your organization, right? It's great that we can do all of these things, right? But if you are not mature enough to do it, if you don't have a defined sales process, start there, right? Because now all of a sudden you're managing it. And if we don't have a defined handoff between marketing and sales and a feedback loop, we should probably start there. And if we don't have a client success story process, we should probably start there too. right? So there are 3 things. If you don't have them, you should start with them, right? You can't do everything all at once. Pick the things that are going to create the most value.
Well, I like to say, give yourself permission to make incremental progress.
Yeah.
You know, that person who starts out at the gym and they're going in like they did 5 years ago or 15 years ago when they haven't worked out in all that time, they're going to be in pain. And your organization can be just, go through just the same thing. And this is really the meat of it. I think this is that systems framework and, systems thinking and creating a framework. You need to be able to create a framework. And by that, I mean a system for success that makes it easy and repeatable by everyone. The organizations suffer from, we're succeeding. Well, you're succeeding on the backs of a superstar or a superhero. What happens when they go on vacation or, God forbid, leave?
Yeah.
You're kind of stuck. You need that systems thinking. So everything requires a framework for success. This podcast, for instance, okay? The framework that I create for the podcast is my remodeled office. We have a podcast studio here so that once we're set up, which takes a lot less time, we can produce a lot higher output. I have that replicated at work, both in my office and in another podcast studio. That is creating a technology framework for success in content creation. Likewise, this Baldcast alone, what are we trying to accomplish today? We create a framework for sales and marketing alignment, and we're really coming at it from what are the systems you're going to put in place? What are you going to create as a team to ensure that it's repeatable? And so that you don't require on tribal knowledge in order to pick it up. How are you going to onboard people? How are you going to train them? When are you going to communicate KPIs? What does the coaching look like? Who's the coach? Is there coaching?
Yeah.
Okay. If you don't have that set up, you don't have an effective framework. And as John has said multiple times, what is the feedback loop? Yep. How is sales going to feed back to marketing? How is marketing going to feed back to sales? All these things have to be established, documented, well understood, reinforced, repeatedly reinforced, and executed so that when your superstars go on vacation, you're still going to be at least at 80%, preferably better productivity level and output.
Yeah. And again, it's culture, right?
It is culture.
You have the ability to define your culture.
Yes.
Right? And it was funny. I was in a meeting and we were talking about, again, how people were going to perceive things. I'm like, why do you worry about it? You set the culture, right? So if you set a culture that says sales and marketing are going to communicate together and reinforce that culture and create incentives to actually make that happen, guess what happens? You get what you're expecting.
Yep.
Right. So when we think about these ideas, it starts with culture. It starts then with expectation, and how the leaders actually communicate. And then how does that trickle down, right? So that publicly they're talking about it and create that culture of openness. Because ultimately, when you don't have that culture of openness, you know what you got? You got 2 groups working separately, and nothing's going to happen in any efficiency moving forward, and you're not going to scale.
Yep.
Because that's ultimately, I get a lot of folks that, how do we scale? Create a culture that allows you to scale.
Absolutely.
Create a process that allows you to scale. Right? Create feedback loops that allow you to understand what's going on so that you can scale. If you want to scale, you got to deal with those things that we're talking about up front.
And a lot of that culture is realized through your KPIs and your metrics. It's a subtle communication. You can create this amazing culture and create a completely stupid set of KPIs.
Yep.
Even that is alignment. And we think of KPIs according to our functional silos. Sales KPIs are considered in a vacuum. Marketing KPIs are considered in a vacuum. We're talking about alignment, culture, and process here, people. You have to think about that comprehensively. I've got a chief marketing officer. I've got a chief sales officer. Are they putting their heads together to think about KPIs and, dare I say it, incentives and compensation?
Yeah.
So it really does require something higher than that. And what that requires is someone above who creates a culture who says, this is the way we're going to collaborate. And then, of course, building the team that does that functionally effectively and kind of frankly enjoys it.
Yeah,
doing it together. I mean, that is a special kind of person.
Yeah, and again, neither party can be too busy to help each other.
Amen.
Right? I mean, that is when I hear that I'm too busy to work with marketing, I'm like, oh, okay, great. That's awesome. Right. How successful are we going to be?
I'm too busy to work with sales. They're just going to screw it up anyway.
Exactly.
Ooh.
Yeah. So
Bad, man.
Again,
Bad
that's not the
mojo.
way it's going to happen.
No.
So
No. So what do you say we wrap this bad boy up?
I think that's good.
Okay. So, we've talked about a lot of different concepts here, and we've put together kind of a checklist of things you're just going to want to go through. Just simple things, just consider pretty much in this order. One of the things you got to start with, and we didn't touch too much on this is an entirely different podcast episode, is we're here to align sales and marketing. We're going to talk about what the heck are you actually selling. There's rumors of stories of people that having 1 million SKUs, right? When they're only selling, 200,000 of them. What the heck are you selling? What are your products? What are your service? And most importantly, what's your value messaging? If you're out there telling different stories, alignment number one. Alignment item number two is you got to establish what is your ideal customer profile. Who are you saying yes to? Who are you saying no to? What are your target markets? What are your KPIs? And I'm going to leave this one to you, John. What is your sales mix?
Yeah. So when we think about it, right, think about it like baseball. I got singles, doubles, triples, home runs, and grand slams, right? You need all of those. You can't have a grand slam without a single and a triple and a double, right? So what does that mix look like, and how do I execute on it? If I go whale hunting, that's great. I hope you have a lot of cash in the bank if you're going to whale hunt exclusively.
Absolutely.
Right? You've got to be able to think about what that not only does to the business when you think about that mix, but how am I going to actually manage that moving forward, and what value and margin do I get out of all of that? We need to think about that when we're putting those strategies together.
And next up, I will really want to see a sales and marketing playbook. What does that look like? What is our process? What programs are we going to implement? How are we going to measure them? How are we going to hand off? How are we going to feedback? What is the process for demand generation? What is the process for demand capture? And how in God's name are we going to measure success?
Yep. And again, where do we find things? What place should we run? Notice we're not calling it a sales playbook. It is a sales and marketing playbook. Because
alignment.
If you're not aligned in that, right, and things coming through, that means you haven't thought it all the way through. And right, we're here to deliver on the marketing side, and sales is there to deliver also. So why not work together to move everything forward?
Yep. And lastly, create a sales and marketing feedback loop. It's interesting. John has brought this up a bunch. I have said this for years. The failure is always traceable to the feedback loop. Let me repeat it. Your failure is always traceable to your feedback loop. If you are not sharing what you have learned with the rest of the organization, you are derelict in your responsibilities, period.
Yep. I mean, sharing's caring.
Sharing is caring.
It is.
I feel like I should have a teddy bear right now.
Absolutely.
Oh, you're a teddy bear.
Well, we're soft and cuddly over on the marketing side.
Except for the hair, except for the bald head. That's hard.
That's true.
And we do have a bonus for you, and it's something we really want you to think about, and that is align sales and marketing incentives and compensation. Again, functional silos. Sales is, paid commission based on revenue, gross margin. Sometimes it's overthought a little bit. And marketing may just be on salary or maybe overall company bonus. But what if you really align them to what those objectives are and what you're trying to achieve, which frankly is really just revenue and gross margin. Yeah. You can try and over-engineer this thing all you want. But your bonus today is really consider aligning sales and marketing around a revenue and gross margin goal.
Yeah.
Plain and simple.
And create teams, create competition, right? Competition is great for internal, to drive internal initiatives. Create that competition because ultimately there's bonuses behind it. I'm telling you, marketing people like money just as much as salespeople do.
Yes, they do.
And ultimately you're going to get better performance out of this, and you'll get better alignment because they know they need each other to make that happen.
And I think that's what really wrapped this up. Honestly, I think you just said it better than it could be said. You need each other to make this happen. Marketing needs sales, sales needs marketing, and everyone in the organization needs both of you. They need you to play together in the sandbox and be best of friends and fully aligned and marching in the same direction. And when you do that, and you exercise some creativity and tenacity, you're going to hit a home run over and over and over again. Well, I had fun. Did you have fun?
I did have fun. This is awesome.
It really is awesome, and I'm looking forward to our next episode. So, folks, On behalf of my partner, John Kunzier from Aerial Digital, go check him out at his company on LinkedIn. You'll be information in the end notes here. You'll be able to connect with both of us. My name is Chuck Coxhead, and we thank you very much for playing along. See you next time.